Hey, good afternoon. This is Carrie Gates in Huntsville. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. I was making sure that I did actually get off of mute. Um, so again, I'm Carrie Gates. I'm here in Huntsville with the PMO for RMS, and today we have some advanced training for you. We call it advanced because it's a little more in depth than a typical beginner would use. We consider beginners to be people, of course, who are just that, folks who maybe have never used RMS, whereas the more advanced users, they typically like to know some of the tips and tricks and different things. So anyways, with that said, I won't delay this. I just wanted to welcome you all, and if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We will be monitoring that, the chat of the WebEx. If for some reason you can't get to the chat in the WebEx and you want to send a message on Teams, I'm currently logged into Teams. I'll do my best to assist you. But again, welcome. And with that, Benita, I'll turn it over to you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. So we want to thank everyone for coming out and joining us, and know your days are busy. As Carrie referenced, there's a chat in the WebEx where we're collecting questions. It actually says Q&A, so don't be confused. It's the same place, just a different way to organize the questions and answers. We will be posting the slide deck, the video that we're recording as we go along, and the Q&A on the website after the training. It takes about 5 days to go through and edit it, but that's available for you. Each section will have a pause, at which time you're welcome to verbally ask questions if they didn't get answered, or if you want further definitions than what we've provided in the chat. And with that, we'll just go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining.
All right, good morning and good afternoon. My name is Jennifer. I'm going to be presenting today. I am the Help Desk Technical Support Lead for the RMS Support Center. And we're going to go over the RMS training for advanced users. All right, the goal of this training is not to tell you how to do policies. We're only telling you how RMS can be used and what you can do inside of RMS. If you have a district policy question or an office policy question, you'll have to direct that to your office or your district, as that can be different depending on which district and which office you happen to be in. For today's topic, we're going to be talking about a couple of different things. We're going to go over the main menu inside of the district. We're going to be talking about adding CLINS, pay activities, mods, and then the RMS schedules, as well as importing, exporting, and RMS closeout. All right, so when you first log into RMS at the district level, you are going to have a couple of different menu items all the way up at the top of the screen, and those are going to be the local office, the district library, the system library, the summary reports, the GIS, and the staff, RMS staff. And what you can see, let me go ahead and highlight this here. When you go into RMS, you've already logged into your district. So you log into RMS, you get into the map, and then the first thing that you're going to see in your district up at the top are these little tabs up here. This is what we're going to talk about first. And the very first one that we're talking about is the local office. The local office is going to be where you're going to go in order to look for, one, the office itself, any sub-offices, and all of that information. You have your local office tree, which is showing up right here. And in order to see this, there's two ways that you can navigate. You can use these expand and collapse buttons over here to expand everything or collapse everything. Or you can use the little arrows off to the left on this side in order to expand just certain offices. Now, the offices can have multiple sub-offices. So you can have an office with a sub-office with a sub-office on down the road. You just have to navigate until you find the office that you're looking for. And then once you want to look at some information with the sub-office, there are these modules down here on the bottom, which will allow you to go in and make some changes or view some things with the office. Now, note, for access into local office, you will either need district administrative privileges or office administrative privileges in order to get in here and view this information. If you go into the office description, so on the previous screen, you select the office that you want, then you go and you click on where it said office description, you will have this view right here. This is what you're going to see. It's very informational to be able to have all this information in here, so that way if you ever need to know who to contact, so if a user calls RMS Support Center, we can come here and be like, okay, you have a district policy question, you have an office policy question. Well, if we look over here, we can see the office manager and we go like, oh, well, this is the person that you need to contact in order to find out what the actual policy is, because we don't have that information, as it's different depending on where you go and when you're using it. And when you set up a new office, it's always a good idea to fill out as much of the information that's in here as possible, because this will help for future uses. This will also help for if any users contact the RMS Support Center and they want to know, hey, who do I contact to do this? We can come in here and we can say, oh, this is the person that you need to contact, so that way they can get the answers that they're looking for. It's always a good idea to as well update this anytime there are changes that are made to any information that's in this center. The next section that we have in the local office area is the office policy. Now, each office policy has the ability to change certain things about the QA report and the QC reports, and that is how this goes through. Now, this one is specifically just for the QA reports, and you have the option of allowing the edits the most complete, or you can do it within a certain number of days, or you're not allowed to edit them at all. And this is, again, based off of the office's policy as to which one you're going to do. You're going to set that one and leave it alone, and then it will go through and propagate to all of the QA reports within that office. Next, we have the office documents. Now, this is basically just a location for any of the templates and macros that you could be using just to show where it's at. You can load it up in here so that way they can use it when they go through and try to do something in the document package. Now, one thing to note with the document package is that there is a 250 megabyte limit for the document size. So keep that in mind when you upload any of your document templates. Don't want to make it too terribly big, because if it's too big, it won't fit. Now we have the mod routing slip. For the mod routing slip, this is actually just a really good idea to fill this one out. If you know for your office that you're always going to have the same information for your modifications that you're doing in your contracts, you can go ahead and fill it out in here. And what that does is that just assists the users in going through when they do their modification. It'll already be pre-populated and they won't have to worry about filling in that information or trying to find that information. So this is an option if you guys want to use that one. But again, refer to the district policy itself or the office policy, depending on how and when you use this one. The next one we have is the interface schedule. So basically, this is just going to tell you when your office or district is going to go through and do these particular updates. So CPhones for this particular district is 7 a.m. UTC time. Now, just remember, almost all the time it's in UTC time. So you will have to convert that time to your time. 9 times out of 10. Oh, wait, no, it's right there. I apologize. So there's the local time. So this is, you have the UC time and the local time showing up for when the CPhones downloads are done and when the P2 downloads are done. So every day, usually when the district is done for the day, you'll have some updates that go through that RMS does in the background. You guys don't have to worry about having RMS open because it's all done in the background for you. So if you notice some things about CPhones not showing up one day and then you turn around, you come in the next day and it's all of a sudden there, that's because the back process has been running and it's updated for you. All right. Office user entries. Now, these are for macros as well as the word templates is just for if you have a specific line of stuff and you know exactly what's going to be in it every single time, you can go ahead and put that in there. This will just make using and editing those word macros easier for users. All right, local office milestones. This module right here is going to show you all of the local office milestones. This allows you to be able to edit specific milestones. So if your office uses one particular type of milestone all of the time for all of the new contracts and you want it to be added to all of your contracts, you can do that in here. And basically you just click on the add button and it will ask you for some information about where and how and what information you can do. Now you will also see the system milestones in here as well. Those ones you cannot update, you cannot edit those, and you cannot delete those because those are done by the RMS Support Center and we're the only ones that update and edit those ones. But those ones will never change because they are set in stone. So the local, anything that says local, you're allowed to edit it or delete it or add it. Again, you must have the office admin privileges in order to come in here and do this kind of information. Now, across the top, you will see that there are these blue sort tiles. This will allow you to sort by all of the milestones in this office, milestones that are set by design, construction, post-construction, system, district, and local office. So this will show you all of your office ones. The next module we have for your local office is the local office contract archive. So what you will notice for this one is there are a couple of different ways. Sometimes we want you to be able to archive your contracts based off of your district or office's policy, whether or not you're going to archive them, but you don't necessarily want to accidentally archive every single contract. It isn't, but you have the ability to archive some of the contracts. You can choose archive a contract, unarchive a contract, or export contract files. Now, note when you go through and use the archive a contract, you'll click on this button right here and it will go through and it will show you the list of all of the contracts that you can possibly archive for that one. And you can use the check boxes that are off to the left to select more than one. However, we do recommend that you be careful and ensure that you don't accidentally select too many, as if you accidentally pick a couple of contracts that are a couple of terabytes long, it could take a very long time and slow down your network to be able to get in there and do that kind of stuff. So just make sure that when you choose these ones, you're doing it very selectively. Now that also applies to the export contract files. Because the newer contracts can be quite large inside of RMS 3, if you click on this export contract files and you've got a contract that you've got terabytes of information that's coming through and you think it's taking too long, it probably has a lot to do with the fact that the contract is really big and the fact that the internet connection between you and our servers is not strong enough to download fast enough, because sometimes that does happen. Now, something to note about this particular part is if you are connected to the VPN, that will slow down the connection to this. Now, you do not need to be connected to the VPN in order to get into RMS government mode. If you need to have access to your emails and all that stuff, yes, you will need the VPN. But for RMS government mode, you do not need access to the VPN in order to do this kind of stuff. So if you want to make sure that you get a really large contract down, then what you can do is you can disconnect from the VPN, click on this export contract files, leave RMS open and connected to the internet. And then once it's done, you will see all the contract files on your computer. And that will help speed it up if your VPN connection is really slow. Okay. P2 projects. So this one, I believe in 238, what happened was you were able to manually, or you were required to manually download your P2 projects in order to get them into RMS 238. However, with RMS 3.0, that's not required anymore. Basically, all you have to do is get everything set up correctly inside of P2, and then RMS will go through and say, tonight's the night, give me my stuff. And usually it takes anywhere from 24 to 72 hours after you enter the information into P2 for it to show up into RMS. So this section right now, there's really nothing going on because you don't really need to do any manual updates anymore because it's already done in the background for you. All right, now, if we back out of the local office, the next thing on the list is the district office. Now, in the district office, we have a couple of modules that you can go ahead and look at. This is where you can set up the district office information from the titles, the contract user rules, the policies, prime contractors, and we'll talk all about these here in just a second. Let's go to the first one, which is the district office. Again, this is very much like the local office, which we just showed before. And again, it's very good to have as much information in here and to keep it as updated as possible. So that way, if anybody needs to go back and take a look, what's the point of contact for this particular district or office or whatever it happens to be, or where is this office located? You can go through and you can take a look at this information. Again, you will need district admin privileges in order to come in here. Now, I forgot to tell you that before. Anything in the district office, you have to have either partial or full district admin rights in order to come in here and take a look at what's going on in here. So if you don't have those rights, you will not be able to get into this tab or this module. Next on the list is the position titles. So this is the position titles. This is where you can add, edit, or delete any position titles that are associated with your district. Which titles you use and which ones you add, that's up to your district, but you have the ability to enter all of that information in this module here. And this will also show you a list of what you do have, so that way you know what it shows. Oh, that's also for the signature positions as well. So these are the signature positions for this particular district. All right, contract user roles. So this is really important. You don't want to be giving users full access for administrative rights all the time, because people make mistakes and we don't want that to happen. So we prevent that by giving them the option of using contract user roles. Now, there are two things to note about this. When you come in here, there are two tabs that show up at the top, the actual user roles themselves, which show up down here, and then the linked staff. So what will happen is when you go to the linked staff, you will be able to say you want to check who is associated with this user role. You click on the link staff, you go to that user role, and you will see the list of all of the staff that are associated with that particular role. Now, if you want to see a particular role to see what permissions they have, you simply select it and choose edit, or you double click on it, and it will bring up this screen right here, which will show you what the permissions are. Now, there are three types of permissions that you can set for users. You can give them read-only access, you can give them read-write access, or you can give them no access, depending on what it is that you want them to be able to do. Now, all of the access does show up in this particular view right here, and then the role title will show up in here. Now, these buttons up at the top are actually kind of nice if you want to really quickly just assign everything, so you know that they only have one area that you want to give them read-only access to, and that's all you want them to do. You can quickly click this button. It will remove all of the other settings, and then you can go through and find the one that you're looking for and set it to read only or read write as you see fit. And of course, you can do the same thing with the read write, or set everything to read only, depending on what the title is. Again, if you want to add a new one, you just click on the add button. If you want to remove one, you just click on the delete button. Again, refer to your district's policy as to which user roles need to be kept and which ones need to have what kind of permissions. Next on the list is the district policy. So the district policy is usually set a long time ago. So this should already be set and taken care of and not really changed, because changing here will cause changes that will go through to all of the other contracts that have already been set up in RMS. And it could impact those contracts negatively. It could impact them positively too, but more than likely it might be a little negatively. So more than likely you're not going to be changing this, but if you want to know what this is, what changes, you can always give us a little ring, or you can send us a message, and we'll be able to let you know, okay, well, that's what this one does, and that's what this one does. The next tab is the mod policy tab. The mod policy tab, this is just for where you can set the mod policies, and again, this is similar to the district policy. Any changes here will affect all modification policies throughout all of the contracts that are in your district. And then the submittal policy, this is the same thing. This will affect what shows up in the contract in your district for these little bits of information. Usually this is set a while ago again and is not really messed with. The next module inside the district office is the prime contractors. Now, this is where you actually add the prime contractors themselves. So that way you can add that information to the contract, because as most of you probably know, if you go into a contract, there is a prime contractors module in there where you enter their detailed information. But all the way up at the top, there's a blue sort tile that you have to click to assign the actual prime contractor. If that prime contractor doesn't show up in that list, that's because it's not in this module right here. So before you can assign them to a contract, you must first add them to this module right here. And again, your buttons are up here in the upper left, add, edit, and delete. If you want, use the search box over here. It's your friend. You'll just start typing in whatever the prime contractor's name is if you think they're supposed to be in there, and then it will start shortening this list, the data grid list that shows up over here. So that way it'll make your job easier. If you've got hundreds and hundreds of prime contractors, it'll be like, okay, I'm looking for someone who's Becker. So I'm going to start typing in the word Becker, and then you'll start seeing all of the B's, and then you've got the BE, and it'll be BE. It'll just shrink it. So that way you don't have to search for a needle in a haystack. You have the option of deleting a prime contractor if they've been removed. However, be very careful with this one. Make sure they're not assigned to any contracts. Now, you can figure that out by double clicking on that and opening it up. And what you will see is at the bottom of that view, there are two tabs. The first tab will tell you who all of the users for that prime contractor are. And the second tab will show you all of the contracts that are associated with that prime contractor. Now, you are not allowed to add users or in this particular area, you must do that in the individual contracts themselves. Now, granted, the contractors are usually added by the contractor, not the government. But if for whatever reason you need to do that, don't do it in the district office. Go into the contract itself, go to that prime contractor, and that's where you can add the users. Because this is just where you add the prime contractor information, not the actual users for that prime contractor. Next on the list is the FY baseline placement. So this is where you can add, edit, delete the schedules used to generate placement reports for the fiscal year that you happen to be working in. And as you can see here, this is our test district. And so we've organized it based, it just said FY 2022 original projected. And depending on what your district policy is will depend on how you guys use this and how you have it set up, how you label all of that information. And what you will see is the status. It'll tell you when it's due, when a due date is not entered, if it's opened, if it's closed, and the projected amount for each of those particular fiscal years. Next is the dredging names. Okay. So if you're going to be using dredging names and you need to get this set up, then that can be done in this section right here. Again, you have your add, edit, and deletes up at the top and your search. So if you have a lot of dredge names that you have and you want to look at a specific one, again, use the search box. Is your friend. Next, archived contracts. So this is similar to the local office archive contracts. The only difference is this has access to all of the district's contracts, period. So be very careful when using the archive a contract. You're not going to want to click on this select all button to archive contracts because that could that could inadvertently cause quite a few problems. And some people will try to get into their contract and be like, hey, it's in the process of archiving. I can't get in. What's going on? So be very careful when you come in here. Just make sure that you only select the specific ones that you actually need. And again, same thing applies with the exporting contract files here. If the contract is very large, it is probably recommended that you, one, disconnect from the VPN before clicking on this export contract files, and then two, just leave it up overnight. Now, if it's big enough, it could actually take a couple of days, possibly 3 or 4, maybe longer. But just keep in mind that if you're trying to export all of the contract files, and this is a very, very large contract, it will take time. And if your internet connection is not always the best, you may want to wait until you can actually get to a faster internet connection. So that way it doesn't take quite so long, because you'll have to leave your computer up and on the whole entire time until it's done, because otherwise it will not completely download everything. And it will give you a little message saying, hello, you disconnected me, I'm stuck. And then you'll have to start again. And that's never fun. So just keep that in mind. Okay, on to the system library. So the system library, there are quite a few modules in the system library, which you can go through and take a look at. Now, one thing to note about the system library is most of this stuff is read only. We provide this information for you so that way you can see what is available. However, changes to this section usually are only done by either headquarters or PMO direction. So if there's something that's missing in here, you will have to go up the chain of command and say, hey, I'm missing something. Can you please add this information in to RMS? And you'll probably have to give them a reason why that needs to be added. But this information is provided for your view, so that way you can take a look and see what it happens to be. But most of it cannot be edited by any of the users. Actually, I think all of it, none of it can. All right. So here's the first one, the RMS Asset Store. This one actually can be edited. This is one of the few ones that you can actually do something with. So the nice thing about the RMS Asset Store is this is the module that allows you to share your information with other districts. So say you are working in multiple districts and you're a district admin for this district and you've got a query that works or a custom report that works really great for something and you want to be able to see it in your other district. What you can do is in your district, you can add it to the RMS Asset Store here. Go to the district that you want the report to be in and then download it into that one. So that way you can easily share the report instead of having to recreate it all over again. This just makes redoing those reports so much easier. So that way you don't have to do double work. Now, you will notice up at the top, again, we have blue sort tiles off to the top. And it will show you which ones and how many of each of those types are showing up in here. Now you will see that there's more than just reports. You have document templates, you've got groups, you've got standard text, all kinds of different things, and including the user role. So any kind of asset that you've got, you can actually add in here. So if you can create a custom report, you can add it here. If you can edit a standard text, you can add it here. If you can add a user role, you can add it here. So those are the kinds of things that you can share with the other districts if you so desire. All right, fund types. So for the fund types, this is partially editable, not really editable because the names can't change, but you can decide based off of your district what information to show in the lookup field. So inside of a contract, when they are given the option of choosing the fund type, you can say, well, I'm never going to use this fund type. Let me uncheck it. So you click on that checkbox, it'll disappear. And the next time they go into a contract, when they click on the fund types, that option is not going to show. So you can go through and pick the ones that you think should be showing up, click the checkbox beside them, or if you think it shouldn't be showing up, and check the checkbox if it's checked. And that will change the lookup that's going in. But again, this information is not editable. All right, next one. Program types. It's the same. Again, the stuff on the left cannot be edited. That's always going to be the same, but you are allowed to show what is going to show up in the lookup fields. So again, same thing with this one. Now, if you want to look for something specific, then this goes for any view that has a list of stuff and you've got a search box up here. Use the search box. It is your friend. It is going to make your life so much easier. It's better than looking for a needle in a haystack. Just start typing in whatever it is that you're trying to find, and it will shorten this list and save you quite a bit of time if you've got like tons and tons of stuff in that list. Next, we have the contract status codes. So this is a list for you to be able to go through and take a look and see what we've got. Again, this is not editable by anybody other than the RMS Support Center. And editing in this area only comes from either headquarters or the RMS PMO. So if you need changes to show up in here, you will need to contact the correct people in order to do that one. You can always contact the help desk and ask us, and we will refer you to either the PMO or headquarters, depending on who it is that needs to be contacted in that particular case. Same thing goes for the primary delay codes. This is the list of all of the primary delay codes for your reference, so that way you can see them. But again, you can't edit them. Yes, there is a search box. It's over here. So if you want to see it, you can still use it. Same thing with the previous page. Next, we have, there we go, the modification reason codes module. Again, just for your reference. And again, there's a search box. Next. All right. This one is the FAR reference codes. This provides all the FAR reference codes that RMS currently has in its system. And again, not editable by anybody but the RMS Support Center. Yeah. Next, we have the agency codes. Now, this one is for anyone who's initiating contracts for modifications. So any type. So when you start a modification, it'll go through and it'll ask you the agency code. This is where that information pulls from. So just so you know, that's where this is coming from. And the next one that we've got is the specification section. There are 3 different specification sections that we have provided for you. The master format from 95, 2004, and 2014. And as you can see, they're just a little bit different. Again, not editable by anybody, but the thing is if you need to have a specific type of specification, that can be done in the actual contract. So you don't actually need to worry about making modifications to this one unless there were changes to the master format itself. In which case, yes, please notify us so that way we can make those changes based off of headquarters or PMO, RMS PMO direction. Yeah. Is the PD squared CLIN units. Now, again, this is the same thing. This information is just like all of the others. We provide it for you for your own reference so you can take a look and see what we have. It gives you a quick glance of what is currently available in RMS. If it's missing, please contact either headquarters or RMS PMO to ask for something that is missing. Then we've got the category codes and units. So the category codes are the first left three that you've got. You've got Army, Navy, and United States Air Force. And then, of course, you've got the unit of measurement. Again, this is for your reference. And see, here's our little search box. I'm gonna emphasize this search box because I love that search box. Cool. Now we've got the RMS support reports. Okay, so for these ones, these are all of the reports that the RMS Support Center actually provides for you guys. You'll go through and you'll take a look at them and you can see what they look like. It'll show the list of all of them. I believe you can look at them, but you can't really do too much with them because they're provided by us. But you can take these and use these to help you create a custom report by downloading them and then using that to tweak it. Say you want, I like this activities comparison report, but I need to have XYZ on it. So instead of recreating the whole thing from scratch, you can take this one, download it, pull it up into the TELEC reports, and then add whatever it is that's missing, and poof, save yourself some time, save yourself a little bit of effort, and there you go. The next one we've got is the query definitions. This one is the ability for you to be able to do some searches inside of RMS. This is only for select statements, and this is only for advanced users. If you do not know anything about SQL, I would not recommend using this section because that is pretty advanced kind of information. You will need to contact someone else to assist you with that information. Next, we have the CFMS batch download times. Now, this gives you every single district's CFMS batch download times. And what you will see is it's going to go by the EROC code for that district. So if you don't know what your EROC code is for your district, all you have to do on the map screen is you'll find the name of your district, you'll hover over that, and then what you'll notice is there's a little pop-up screen that shows up. And I think it's the last line. It says EROC. That's the code that will show up in here. Or if you want, what you can do is you can also look at the contract ID. Go into your district, look at any of the contract IDs. IDs, not numbers, IDs. And the first two will be EROC code, so H5 or H4 or whatever it happens to be. I think the only one I have a couple memorized, but I don't remember which one. But that will allow you to know which one's going on. But if you want to know just yours, you can go back to the local office and find it from there, as we showed you earlier. But this will tell you when everybody's is going through. Next, we have the summary reports. Now, the summary reports is a list of all reports that are provided by us, as well as the custom reports that are ready for review. So you will be able to see them all in this section. And you can see that across the top, there are sort tiles. Now, this section is gone. We no longer have the legacy reports. They have been removed. But you do have all of the other information that is showing up right across the top. And what you will notice is that if you click on any of these, it will change what shows up down here based off of this information. And then it'll tell you right here in the title what you are looking at. So if I were to click on this QA/QC reports, then I would see only 6 reports, and over here it would say QA/QC report. And that will make your life easier. Or again, if you know what the report is called, you don't even have to do that. Just type in the search, pull it, find it. It's the only one on there. It makes it easy to find. Next. All right. RMS GIS. Okay. So for this one, this is where you can come in and make any changes to things like the future contracts this year, active contracts, constructed cost for us, just to look at some of this stuff so that way you can see what's going on. And in this area, we're constantly going through and we're making updates. So what you can see is there's this little construction icon and the little construction icon. That means that we're currently working on doing something with that one. So just keep that in mind. Anytime you see that it's not yet ready for production, but it's coming. And the next thing that we've got here is the user settings. Now, this is for your local user cache settings and preferences. It basically is just something to determine how much information you're downloading onto your computer. And it's only for the local user. You can set it or not, but most computers are fast enough that you actually don't really need to go in here and change or make any modifications to this at all. But it's there in case you want to be able to use it. And this is what you see. You've got unlimited caching, which is the default because most computers nowadays have the ability to do the caching. Now, the nice thing about the caching is the more that you have on your computer, the faster your computer and RMS are going to talk to each other. Excuse me. Goodness. And you can set some of the user preferences and some of this stuff. And again, remember, this is just for your local computer for your own computer settings to speed up your computer with working with RMS. Excuse me again. I apologize. All right, take a little drink of water, try to get rid of that. All right, so the RMS mobile is no longer available for download. So if you want to use RMS mobile, I'm sorry, we're not using that anymore. So one is the RMS Staff. This is where you're going to add all of the users to your district and give them access to the district one way or the other. When you open up the RMS Staff, you will see that there's an add, edit, and delete button. And what you don't see up here is up at the top above that, not here, but above this view, up at the top, there's a couple of sort tiles that will allow you to go through and see various different types of users. You can see all of the, let's see, you can see the district admins, the office admins, the partial district admin users, the partial district office admin users, things like that. So those sort tiles are up at the top for your use. And what you will also see is when they were logged in, if they've been deleted, if they are active, if they're not active, obviously the checkbox is not active, what office they are associated with, their RMS ID, and of course, their name. If you set it. If you don't set it, then it'll show up as name not set. So you'll need to go back in there and set that information. This is also where you link a user to their CAC and all that other kind of stuff. If you want more information on exactly how to go about setting up a staff member inside of RMS, go to our YouTube channel. We have a newly created and newly updated video telling you exactly how to set the user roles, as well as how to set up the RMS staff, link them to their CAC, or link them to their login if they are a non-CAC login user. At this point, we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions. And if I don't hear anything, we will keep moving on. Otherwise, any questions? No questions? All right, next section. Let's see. Yeah. Finances tab. Probably the most complicated section inside of RMS is the finances tab. We tend to get a lot of questions about finances. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to talk about a lot of the different things in the finances tab. I will try to point out some pretty common issues, as if I can think of them when I see the actual screen that we get to. If you do get stuck doing anything in the finances tab and you have a problem, we do have quite a few videos that can help you with some of this stuff. We have quite a few videos on the pay activities, on contract changes and modifications, and setting up award CLINS, current CLINS, and correcting some common mistakes with modifications as well. All right. So this just gives you a little bit of information about what the finance module is used for. I'm not going to read this because I'm pretty sure y'all all know what that is for. And if not, we've provided the slides for you. You can go ahead and delete them and read them at your leisure. Okay, finances. When you log into a contract, the first screen that you're going to see is the administration tab. If you want to go to the finances, you're going to click on this button here that says finances. Now, if you click on this button here and it says finances and all you see is future contract, that means you haven't set up the milestones yet. So before you can come to the finances, you must first go under schedules, then go into milestones, and you must set that the contract award date and the duration for the contract in order for this to go through. Now, at the same time, you'll probably be doing the NTP acknowledged as well, though that will be dependent upon the district's policy. It could be that you will set all this stuff up first before you do the NTP acknowledged, but just know that the contractor is not going to be able to do too much until after that NTP acknowledged date has been entered. Now, keep in mind, the date that I'm talking about is the actual date, not the scheduled date. So if you want to have things changed inside of RMS so that way something happens, if it's a system milestone, it has to be an actual date entered in order for those changes to be actually made. Cool. Once everything is set up correctly, these are all of the modules inside of the finances tab, and we will go over those. I think we'll go over most of them, if not all of them. And the first one happens to be the contract of finances. So in the contract finances, this is where you go through and you set everything up, where you find everything to get set up in order to see what funding accounts you're using and what contract funding you're using, PRs and Cs and obligations, all that other fun stuff. Now, if you don't see anything in here and you have clicked the CFMS download and it comes up and it says, no obligations found for the contract number, or no contract was found because it hasn't been set up yet, you'll need to back out of this screen, go to the administration tab, and then go to the contract description and set the contract number and the delivery order number as it shows in CFMS. It needs to be exactly as it shows in CFMS, because if it's not exactly as it shows in CFMS, then what will happen is when you get over to this screen, you do a CFMS download, it'll give you the same thing. No contract was found. You're going to be like, what? I know it's there. Okay. That means you'll have to go into CFMS. Now, one common problem that I have seen is sometimes the people who are doing the contract finances in RMS are not the same people who are updating the information in CFMS. And sometimes they'll make a slight change. They'll get rid of a dash, or they'll add a dash to the contract number, and for whatever reason, the communication gets lost and it hasn't been updated in RMS. So you go to do a CFMS download and it says nothing found, and you're like, wait a minute, I know we added that new obligation. Where did it go? You will have to go to CFMS and find out exactly what the contract number and delivery order number now show and update RMS to reflect, and then come back in here and do a CFMS download. Now, what the CFMS download does is it's basically the same thing that happens every single night with RMS. And that is, it will go through and it'll go to CFMS. It'll say, hey, here's my contract number. What kind of information, what new information do you have for me? And if it sees new information, it will bring it into this view right here. And you will be able to see all that information. Now, if you think something new is coming in and nothing new shows up, then that's probably the contract number and delivery order number not matching in CFMS. The other one, which might be on the next screen, yes, I'll talk about that in just a second. So for this one, you will see there are sort tiles across the top again, and this is where you can look at all of the finances, the appropriations, and all that kind of stuff based off of what you want. And again, you have the expansion and collapse to be able to view everything, or you can just use these arrows that are over here in order to expand a specific funding account to see certain information. Now, anytime you select information that shows up in here, there's usually some kind of detailed information down in this section right here, which will talk about that particular item that you selected, whether it's the appropriation, the PRNC, or obligation, depending on where you're at and what you're looking for. All right, let's see here. Yay, CFMS cleanup. So CFMS cleanup is not as scary as it might seem, but you will get a warning to let you know that if you're cleaning up the CFMS information off of here and you hit this button, it's going to ask you to sign off on this to make sure everything is good. Before hitting this button, I would recommend that you go into CFMS first, find out what the contract number and delivery order number is for the contract that you're looking at, and make sure that RMS matches exactly, because if you don't and they don't match and you click on this button, you sign off on your name and all of your finances disappear, you're like, oh, what happened? We don't want that. But if that happens, it's okay, because guess what? You can fix that. All you have to do is go to CFMS, find out exactly what the contract number and delivery order number is, put it in the contract description, and then do this again, and poof, it'll be right back. So it's not that scary, but do note that it will be logged inside of RMS if you do that. So just make sure that if that happens and you see that, you're like, I need to find out what my delivery order number is. So do that first. Contract number, delivery order number. Do that first, and you're good. Okay, on to the CFMS Finances tab inside of Contract Finances. So what we have in here is, this is everything that's expanded. You will see that in this particular case, all of these ones, because this is a test contract, is a non-CFMS account. But if it's a CFMS account, you'll see all of the information that has to associate with your account going up down in here. And if anything is missing, there could be a couple of different reasons why that is. You'll have to look into CFMS, make sure it's shown up in CFMS correctly, or you'll have to look at the contract number, delivery order number, make sure that matches RMS is matching CFMS, because those are the two reasons that it doesn't show up. Again, If you select any one of these, you've got little details that will show up down here that will give you more information. Now, I think I'm going to go, yes, okay. Contract funding. So this is where all of your funding information is going to show up. Now, if you're connected to CFUMS, your funding accounts will show up here automatically if they were set up correctly inside of CFUMS. And one thing to note, if you don't know how to set up your information inside of CFUMS or it wasn't set up correctly, you will need to contact the person who does do that and have them verify that everything is set up correctly. Or if you're the one that does that and you need to know how to do that, you will need to contact CFUMS support to ask them how to do that, because we are not authorized to provide CFUMS support for any RMS users. We only support RMS, and we cannot give you any information in CFUMS as we do not have access to CFUMS. So when you come in here, the nice thing about this, if you find your funding account and you can see it, but not everything is showing up correctly, go ahead and click on that. And then you'll see the information that's showing up down here. And sometimes it will show you all of the information that's showing up in here. And actually the funding balance is the most important one. And it will tell you if it's set up correctly inside of CFUMS if you go to the funding balances, because it will tell you no funds allocated for this particular contract or something to that effect. If you see something like that, that means it's not set up correctly in CFUMS. And once that gets corrected, then you'll be able to have access to that inside of RMS. Now, again, something that I did not quite say, there's a bunch of stuff that's over here off to the side on almost all of the slides, giving you a little bit more information outside of what I'm giving you. I'm not going to read that because we've provided the slides for you, which you can read at your leisure. I'm just going to try and give you some extra information so that way you have more information to go by. Okay. Project funding tab. Now, in the project funding tab, this one is, if you've got it set up so that your contract is project funded at the project level, this is what you're going to end up seeing. And you can edit this and then hit the back button to save it. So basically, when you've got your project funding, you've got your project ID, you just double click on it, you can edit this and then back it up. With the funding balances tab, if you see that the funding accounts are showing up in this screen right here, but you go to try and edit it either in a modification or a award CLIN and it's not showing up, then come to this view, because when you select on this view down here at the bottom, you'll have a lot of information that will tell you what's going on. So here, it will tell you available for request in CFUMS. This is one of the ones that will help you with this. PRNCs for this contract. This is also one of the little sections that will tell you if something is not set up correctly in CFUMS. This information is provided for you to try and help you figure out, okay, well, what is going on? Why is my obligation not showing up? Or why don't I have any money? Why can't I use it for this particular contract? Come to this section and take a look at PRNCs not for this contract, authorized amount in CFUMS, and make sure this information matches what you think it should. Because most of the time, what I have seen when I've had users say, hey, my funding is here, it's working like it's supposed to, but I can't connect it to the CLIN. What's going on? I can come in here and I can take a look at this and I show them, I'm like, your authorized amount in CFUMS is $0. Is it supposed to be $0? And the answer is, no, it's supposed to be way more than that. So at that point, that will tell you that you need to go back to CFUMS and make sure everything is updated correctly in CFUMS. And again, if you need to know how to do that in CFUMS, you'll need to contact CFUMS support for that one, because I don't know how to do that. All right, next we have the obligation balances. So this is going to show you all of the obligations that are associated with this particular contract inside of CFUMS. And of course, when you select it by single clicking on it, you can take a look down here. It'll give you the basic information for this one and what kind of setup it happens to be. Next, on to the award CLINS. So this is the first, you only set this up one time at the beginning, very beginning. After that, don't touch it. Don't change it. Don't touch it, because if you change the award CLINS after payments have been made or after modifications have been made, well, one, if you try to do it after a modification has been made, RMS 3 is going to tell you, you can't do that, because what happens is if you make changes in the modifications and then you try to delete the award CLIN, well, you've made changes in the modifications. You can't do that because it's linked to, it starts from the award CLIN. So you can't delete the beginning step. You have to keep the beginning step. So in this section, just remember, this is set when you first set up the contract. That's the only time it's set. After that, don't touch it. It'll work beautifully if you set it up. So just make sure you put everything in that needs to be in. Now, some districts will allow you to put in $0 award contracts. The only thing I think that'll actually be on the next page. Yes, we'll talk about that in just a second. But we'll talk about that, some of the information that I was going to talk about. But what you can see, sorry, I think I need less caffeine. Too much coffee for me. On here at the bottom, this will tell you all of your totals for the awards and if there is a variance. Now, this is important because you want to make sure that there are no variances after you set up your award contracts. Now, the variances are talking about the difference between the award amounts and the award obligations. You always want the award amounts and the award obligations to pretty much be equal. So that way, there's no issue as you go further along. So if you get into here and you've added your CLIN, and they're not equal, then you will see you'll see some red on one of these two columns, and you'll see that there's a variance down here. And you'll have to fix that before you can continue to work with this particular contract. When you add a new CLIN, this is the screen that will first show up. You have the option of using either a price parent CLIN or a sub-CLIN. Now, the thing to note about the sub-CLIN is you can't use more than one obligation on a sub-CLIN. You can only use just one. But the parent CLIN, you can actually use more than one. So just pay attention to what those ones are. If you think that there's a possibility down the road that there's a modification on a CLIN that could use a different obligation, use the parent CLIN, don't use the sub-CLIN. And then once you have that choice set up, you're going to click on the next button that shows up down here to view this screen right here. Now, this screen will tell you, this screen is where you enter the information for the award CLIN itself. Now, if you decide that you want your award CLIN to be $0 because it's an option and you set it up in here and you put $0, please make sure you click on this checkbox right here, CLIN pricing complete, ready to fund. Because if this is not checked, when you go to actually add money to this CLIN inside of RMS in a modification, and this is not checked, RMS is going to say, you can't do that because the CLIN pricing is not complete and it's not ready to fund. Now, you don't have to set up the funding if it's a $0 one, but you do have to check this box to make sure that actually gets taken care of. Now, when you come in here and set this one up, you get to set the unit of measurement. You can edit the description in the unit of measurement. Now, these right here that are grayed out are only grayed out once this checkbox has been checked. So if you need to make edits to these ones, then this checkbox cannot be checked. So first, make sure you add all of the information that needs to be here. Once that's done, you check this box. If it's $0, then you just hit the back button to go back. If it needs money, then you click on the funding to go to the next screen, so that way you can set up the funding information that shows here. Now, like this one has already been set up because we clicked on the funding button. Once you've done that, you will see down here whether or not everything is set up correctly. If you have a $0 variance, you're good. Hit back, go on to the next one. If there is a variance, that means something's not quite right. And usually it won't let you continue if it does. It won't let you continue in the funding section if it's not quite right. All right. Here's some more information about price parent CLINs and parent CLINs themselves. I'm not going to read this one. You can go ahead and read that whenever you want at your time, but I am going to say that with the CLINs inside of RMS, it's important to note that the RMS CLINs are not the CFMS CLINs. CFMS does not see RMS CLINs at all. So you can put them in however you want to put them in inside of RMS, but it's best to try and keep them the same as what's in CFMS. So that way, when you come through and you take a look, you know what goes where and why, but just know that they are not the same thing. So if you update something in CFMS and you're like, well, why didn't that CLIN update in RMS? Because it's not from CFMS. This is from RMS. The only way that RMS connects to CFMS is through the obligations. That's it. So that's in the funding tab. That was this tab right here. So the RMS CLINs are not the CFMS CLINs. Just keep that in mind. Okay. Next. All right. The next section in here is the current CLINs. This is going to show you all of the CLINs that are currently available and the amounts that are available for the contract, including all modifications that have been made to RMS. Now, the nice thing about being in here, well, one, you can't edit or change anything in here. There's nothing can be done in here because the current CLINs are based off of award CLINs and contract modifications and changes. But what you can do is you can come in here and you can single click on one of these CLINs, and down here at the bottom, it will tell you how it was set up, whether it was just an award CLIN, whether it had modifications. And then down here at the bottom, it'll show you the total, the current contract amount and the current CLIN amount. And all of that stuff will be at a quick glance right there for you to take a look at. All right. So we're going to talk about the pay activities. If you want to read this a little bit more in more detail, then what you can do is go ahead and download the slides. By the way, the slides are on our website at rms.usace.army.mil. And if you scroll down, there's a little section that talks about the slides for today's and yesterday's trainings. In the pay activities, now, most of the time, the pay activities are probably going to be set up by the contractor. I would recommend that you have the contractor set it up, especially if they're using an SDEF file. Now, I would also recommend using an SDEF file, my personal opinion, because I find it much, much easier. And I have been told by some other government representatives that it's easier in the long run, for things to go through with the SDEF file. So most of the activities and stuff like that should be set up by the contractor. But if the government has to set them up, then they can come in here and do it from this area right here. Now, do note that if the government comes in and makes any changes to the activities and the contract is set up with an SDEF file, you must tell the contractor that before they do their next SDEF import in their scheduling software, they need to add the stuff that you put in here with the same activity ID. This is very important. If they change the activity ID in their scheduling software, when they go to import that SDEF file, the old one that was entered in before will be removed. And if it was paid in a progress payment, the next progress payment is going to come through and say, hey, I have a negative number because I don't exist anymore. So just make sure that you, if they're using an SDEF file, that gets updated in their scheduling software. But that's actually really easy to fix. So if you see that in a progress payment, then the contractor's got to go back to their SDEF file, update the activity ID, make sure it matches correctly, re-import, and then poof, it'll be fixed. It's actually a pretty quick fix, but just so you know, that's something to keep in mind. Now, you've got two sort tiles up here, up at the top, and this will allow you to see all of the activities or ones with CLINs and without CLINs. Now, this is actually kind of nice because if they don't set up the CLIN for whatever reason, then you'll be able to see how many are not set up with a CLIN. If there's something that's not set up with a CLIN, you will not be, well, the contractor will not be able to start the next progress payment. So it's very important that all of the pay activities are set up and put on a CLIN, and that there are no variances that show up down here on the bottom. So you have the current contract will always show up down here. The sum of all activities, these should match, and there should never be a variance. If there's a variance, again, can't go through the progress payments. That has to be fixed. And then you can also have the summary of the actual CLIN. So if you click on the first one and it happens to be CLIN 1, it'll show you CLIN 1. If you click on this one down here, which is CLIN 8, it will show you CLIN 8 down here. All right. And that's all under the Activities tab. Next, we're going to go to the CLINS tab. The CLINS tab has 3 sort tiles. You can see all of the CLINs, the balanced CLINs, and the unbalanced CLINs. Well, this is actually pretty useful. So if you were on the Activities tab and you saw that there was a variance down here at the bottom and you didn't know which CLIN and you've got like 10 CLINs, you're not going to go through and you're not going to click on every single activity to find out, okay, which one's not balanced. You go to the CLINS tab and click on unbalanced CLINs, and it'll show up over here in red. So that will be a really quick way to figure out, okay, what's going on. And it tells you the sum of the activities, the current contract, the number of activities, and all of this other stuff. Quite useful. There is actually a video on our YouTube channel with in-depth information for contractors to go through and take care of this if they have to do this manually. If they're doing it with an SDEF file, it's much easier because everything's done in the SDEF file. You import it, it's taken care of. As long as it's entered in correctly. Next, the Contractors tab. So if you've got contractors with subcontractors, then all of that information will show up in here. And what you will see is if there's a subcontractor that's been linked to, not linked to an activity, they'll show up over here in red. That just means that they have 0 activities. This tells you how many activities are associated with each of the contractors. And of course, you can take a look at the number to see how many do not have pay activities linked to them, how many do, or all of them, depending on what you want to see with these sort tiles that are going over here. And again, they'll tell you the trade, it'll tell you how much is subcontracted out to, and then it'll give you the responsibility code for that particular contractor or subcontractor. The next one is the features tab. Again, this is kind of similar to the contract. It's going to list all of the features that you have associated with this particular contract. And if it's red, that's because there are no activities associated with that feature. Now, here's the caveat. Inside of RMS, a pay activity can only be assigned one feature. But a feature can be assigned to multiple pay activities. So if you have one activity that has to be on 2 features, you can't do that. So just know that if you know you've got a feature that is going to be associated with the other activity, you can only assign it to 1. You can't assign it to 2. So keep that in mind. And again, you have the sort tiles across the top, which allow you to take a look at how many are linked to pay activity. Well, in this case, not linked to pay activities, linked to pay activities, or all of the features that are linked in here. Now, we again have videos on the on creating the features and the 3-phase inspections on our YouTube channel. So keep that in mind. That stuff is there for your contractor's reference. So if your contractor is asking you, hey, how do you do this? And you're like, I don't know. Go to YouTube. It's a wonderful tool. It will show you a lot of information. We try to keep that as updated as possible with the most and the newest and the best information about how to use RMS and how to do different things in RMS. So if you've got a contractor that's constantly asking you about how do I do this, or there's a topic that you would like to see as a video, let us know, because we try to keep that stuff as updated as possible. And we try to use that information so that way it's geared towards what you guys need. If it's something that a lot of people need, we will definitely create a video on that one. So let us know. We would love to hear from you. Okay, more information about the pay activities. I'm not going to go ahead and read this. Just go ahead and take your time whenever you download the slides to take a look at these to see what it has to say. This has got some pretty good information. But okay, so we're going to go ahead and get back to it. So a lot of this information I kind of hit on already with the previous slides, so I'll probably gloss over them a little bit, but this is just to give you a little bit more information. So I did tell you about the sort tiles that are showing up on here. And it's talking about how you can use that for filtering. Now, something that I didn't talk about before is you also have these little filter funnel looking icons at the top of each column. Now, the nice thing about these funnel icons is if you know you want to see something specific, you can click on this funnel icon and go through and take a look to further narrow what's in this data grid that shows up down here. And again, remember, the details, there's almost always on all screens inside of RMS, you're going to have some kind of detailed information that will show up down at the bottom. And that's for most of it. And again, remember, there's information over here, probably more or slightly different from what I'm talking about. So if you want, take your time, download the slides. We provide them for you on our website, and you can go through and you can read all that. So we already did talk about these tabs, the sort tiles that are showing up in here. This is just going to give you some more information about kind of what I talked about already. Now, again, this information is going to change when modifications show up. So keep in mind, when you do a contract modification, the information that's going to show up in here is going to change based off of what you have set up. Now, depending on whether you're using an SDF file or whether you're using manually updating the activities, will depend on how you go about when this information is balanced. So again, it's probably going to save you a lot of time in the long run to be using an SDF file in order to update this information. But that means that the contractor will need to update their scheduling software in order to get the stuff balanced. And when we get to the contract modifications and contract changes, I'll kind of talk a little bit more about that as well. All right. CLINS assignment and prices. So this is where we're actually going to show you how to actually edit the activities. So from the activity tab, you double click on the activity itself. It will open up this view right here. Or when you click on the add button, you will open up this view right here. This is the activity edit view. This is where you can set the subcontractor, the feature, the duration, the phase, the area, the description. Let me go through and point at these so you know what I'm talking about. The subcontractor comes here, the feature comes here, duration, the phase, the area. You can put the description showing up here. Now notice all of these are, well, not that one. All of these ones are editable with the exception of the activity number. This, once it's been set, that's it. You can't change it. So if you click on the add button, the first screen that you're going to get is a pop-up that says, what is the activity number? That is also the activity ID. That can't be changed once you put that in there, except for using an SDEF file, because if they put the wrong number in the SDEF file, it's going to overwrite it. But remember, try not to change. Make sure you tell your contractor, don't change the activity ID or the activity number in the scheduling software between SDEF uploads, because it's going to do some funky things with your progress payments. So don't change that. That's why in RMS, when you're doing it manually, we don't allow you to change that, because we use the activity number to keep track of what's been paid and how much has been paid on that particular activity. Okay. So if you need to set individually, you need to set the subcontractors and all that other stuff. You can go into each individual activity and set all this information. Now, this is why I say you'll save time by using an SDEF file, because in the scheduling software, you can set all this stuff already. You don't have to go into each individual activity inside of RMS and, okay, let's click here to find the subcontractor lookup view, pick the right subcontractor, click OK, pick the right feature, click OK. Do the same thing with the work categories and the, oh, this one happens to have dredging water feature. Now, this is only going to show up in contracts that are set up with dredging. Specifically, in this case, it's a dredging water feature. If your contract isn't set up with dredging, you're not going to have this in there. You don't have to worry about that. But again, if you have the contractor set all of that stuff up in the in their scheduling software, they can literally just type it in their lines really fast instead of click here, click there, click, 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 click. It'll take a lot longer to set up manually than to do it through scheduling software. So that's one of the reasons why it will take longer. Now, it helps the government out as well, because it helps you with the schedule, because it also gives you the schedule and you can go through and you can approve it, make sure they stay on schedule, make sure they stay on task, and everything is good to go, and go from there. It will save you a lot of time instead of having to do it manually as well. But that's a little bit later in the section. Okay. So what you've got for the assignments, you get into the activity. You've got the CLIN assignment, which can come down here. And it will tell you, let's see, this activity is linked to an amount only CLIN. You can enter, oh, so if you've got like quantities and things like that, there's a couple of different types of quantities. It's depending on how your CLIN is set up as to what information will show up down here. If you have a quantity CLIN, then you're just going to get a quantity. If you have, I'm drawing a blank in my brain of what the other one is, an amount CLIN. It's not an amount CLIN, like a square footage, something to that effect. Like there's so many square footages that you have to do for sod. You got to put out 500 square foot of sod for the construction site. Then that's not going to be one lump sum. That's probably going to be a square footage kind of CLIN, and that will show up here once you select CLIN. So you can put the activity amount if you want to. That needs to be put in, but once you put in the CLIN, you'll see both the quantity and the actual amount showing up down here. So that's what that's talking about in this case. All right. We're going to go on to modifications now. Again, this information is for you to go ahead and take a look at whenever you have time and just provide some more information. I'll kind of hit on most of this stuff, but I'm not going to read it to you right now. All right. So backtracking just a little bit. So the previous one I showed you was the edit. Now they're actually going to show you how to actually add it if you have to add it manually. You click on the add button, and this is where you can add the activity number. Remember, this is the one, you can only change it here. That's it. It can't be changed anywhere else. When you're done with that, you just click OK. Okay, so this is a little bit more information about what each of these little sections do. You can go ahead and take a look at that at your leisure, because I kind of talked about that already. And then this talks about editing the various different activities. And this is good. This one down here shows you, let me see if I can zoom in on that for you. That one there we go. This one shows you that there's a variance going on, and as you can see, it's red. This is good because this tells you that, hey, CLIN 1 is $4 million, but you, for some of the activities for CLIN 1 is only $2.5 million. You need to add more money to your activities to balance these ones out in order to be able to do the next progress payment. But this is what you will see when something is not quite balanced the way that it should be. Yeah. And of course, as always, your back button is your save button. There is no save in RMS, it's the back button. So make sure you click on the back button, and again, keep an eye on this refresh button too, because it tells you when there have been changes to the contract. Now, it may not be on the screen that you're on, but just keep an eye on it so that way you don't get any surprises. If it starts spinning, because that tells you, that's when it will tell you something has changed. You may not update the screen that you're in, but if you see it spinning, it's probably a good idea to click on it just to see if anything changes with what you're doing. Okay, so you have the ability to delete activities inside of RMS. There are a couple different ways. So for the delete, this is your delete button right here. Now in the activities tab only in the activities tab. When you click on the delete button, it's going to give you an option of what it is that you're going to delete. Now, any other section inside of RMS, there are a couple of places inside of RMS that offer you a delete button. If you are not careful, there is no option to choose. What kind of delete do you want to do? It's going to be like, hey, you want me to delete the active record that you got selected? All right, I can do that. You want me to delete? But thankfully, it will ask you, do you want me to delete? And you can either cancel it or not. So most of the time, it's not just going to automatically delete it, but I would suggest before you click on that delete, make sure what you have selected is actually what you want to delete, because that changes things. Now, the other options are to delete a single record, which is the first one, enable multiple delete, which will allow you to select more than one, or delete all the activities. If you are using an SDEF file, deleting all activities is not exactly detrimental. However, if the contract does not use an SDEF file, deleting all the activities is extremely detrimental because it's gone. Bye-bye, done. So RMS does have the ability to pull things back for 5 days, depending on what it is and how difficult it is to get it back. But what you should know is, do not use the delete all activities if you do not have an SDEF file. And if you do have an SDEF file and you use delete all activities, we at the RMS Support Center will not restore it. You will need to do it through an SDEF file, because the SDEF file will give you more accurate information and it will do it better and more accurately. Because if we have to restore something, please note that that could cause problems. So do not use the delete all activities unless you really, really mean to. And make sure you let your contractors know the exact same thing, because if they delete everything, they don't use SDEF file, is gone. So that's not a good thing. Just keep that in mind. Again, it usually gives you a warning. Are you sure you want to delete this activity? And it'll tell you which activity you have selected. You can either say, yes, I want to delete it, or no, don't do that. That's not what I wanted. I didn't mean to click on that button, because it happens. So keep that in mind. You do have a slight warning most of the time before you do any kind of deletion inside of RMS. All right. Now we're talking about enable multiple deletes. So when you're using the enable multiple deletes, what you will see is it'll change the view so that when you have these checkboxes over the top, if you want to be able to select multiple, you can only use these checkboxes. If you come over here and you check here and then you check here, well, the first one that you checked is no longer checked. Make sure you use only the checkboxes off the side, select multiple one, and that is the one that you want. Then what you will do is you'll click on the delete button again to choose delete selected records. Of course, you can choose select all the records or unselect all the records. And then if you decide, nah, actually, I don't want to delete anything, you can disable that multiple delete. One thing to note about this is if you sort this view so that way it changes what's going on and you do the select all, please note that that actually selects every single pay activity, not just the ones that are in the sort view. So be careful. Make sure you are actually only selecting the ones that are showing up, not the ones that are in the sort file, because I've had a couple of people come in and talk about that and they deleted a whole bunch of stuff and they were mortified because that's not what they wanted to do. So please be careful when using the delete button because, again, if you're not using an SDF file, it will take a while to restore it. Ta-da! Delete all manual act. Okay, so this is a little bit more information. And again, as you see, we say stop and proceed with caution. Please be careful because if you're deleting everything, you want to make sure that that's really what you want to do. Because again, if you are not using an SDF file, restoring this information is going to take time, especially if you have hundreds of pay activities. Alrighty then. We're moving on to the contract changes. So that's going to be this module right here. The contract changes starts with a basic change document. And once you go through and get all of that, this is basically what the BCD looks like once it's been filled out. So all of this information is set up. RMS will fill out the information. They use the document from the USACE headquarters that has been provided. And this is the form that we usually use. And we fill all that information out based off of the information you enter into the module itself. When you open up the contract changes, you will see the list of all of the contract changes, and it says change requests, but we always call it the contract changes, but it's the same thing. Change requests, contract changes, same thing. And what you can see here is the changes that have been set up and where their statuses are. Now, there are 3 statuses inside of the contract request. You have a status of 4, which means it is not yet ready for use. It's only just started. It's basically just beginning. So it hasn't been completed. It's not ready to be used. 5 means that it's ready to be used for a modification. 6 means it's already been tied to a modification. So that information will help you out with some of that kind of information. You'll also have the reference number that shows up. Usually this is going to show up when it's been linked to a modification, but sometimes it'll show up before that. It'll show you the change amount that you have for that particular change request, as well as the change days and the age based off of when the dates were entered. And of course, you have your change request number, which is editable. Now, when you single select any of these ones, you'll get a brief summary down here at the bottom, which will tell you where it's at in the process of going through and what it's using. Now, you won't necessarily have a green checkbox beside each of these individual items. It's just dependent upon your particular change and your district or office's policy about which information needs to be checked and which one's required, and of course, the summaries that go along with that. When you click on the add button in the change request, the very first thing that you get is the option to choose what kind of change request are you going to do. You've got the single part, you've got a first part, you've got a subsequent of a multiple, and then of course you've got the weather modification. Now, if it's the last one of a multiple, you're going to click on this subsequent, and then once you open it up, you'll have the option to check the box that says this is the final one for this one. But it won't show up in this section. It'll show up in the edit view. And I don't know that we have a picture of that, but I'll talk about where it's about, approximately where it's about on the view. Now, if you're going to do a modification based off of weather, this one's actually kind of nice because it will pre-fill out a lot of the BCD items for you and format it all nice and pretty. So if you know that the change request is going to be specifically for weather modification, definitely use this because it will save you a little bit of time in creating the BCD items and all of that stuff because it pre-populates a lot of that for you. And as you can see, when doing the weather modification, it's going to ask you, what date was this for? And then what is the change request number? It'll also ask you down here at the bottom if it's associated with a specification section. You can set that or not. That's up to you, and that's up to the district's policy if that's going to be set for your particular contract. But you do have that option. So from this page, you hit next, and then if it's a weather modification, it'll show up like this, and then you'll hit finish to start editing it and making any changes. If it's not a weather, if it's any of the other three, then it's just going to ask you for the change request number, which you can modify after you have set this page. It's one of the few places where when it asks you for the number, that you can actually modify it. Oh, I apologize. It's not here. There's another section that you can modify. It's the BCD number, not the change request number. I apologize. So make sure on this screen right here, when you enter the change request number, it's the correct change request number that you want it to be, because it's the BCD item that's different. As you can see, the change request number is not editable at this point in time. Now, with the weather extension, you will see it already tells you, it will already give you the change request title. It'll set that up for you, and it'll put the dates in there for you. If it's not a weather, then this information, you will have to enter it in, it'll be in slightly different locations, but that information will show up. The staff that is set up will show up here. If there's nothing here, you select your staff member by clicking on this button. It'll bring up a staff lookup field, and it'll go through, and you'll be able to pick the person associated with it. You also have agency codes, reason codes, and mod types. These blue boxes are lookup fields. These are, again, pulled from the system library. So if you want to know what all that information is, you can go to the system library, or so that way you don't have to open up a contract and come into a change request in order to see what's in here. But with a weather modification, again, you will already have the reason code defaulted for you. Now, if it's not a weather modification, the page where you set the change request number is also going to ask you what's the agency code, what's the reason code, and what's the mod type. It's going to ask you to put all that information in. And when, if you're doing a multi-part and this is the final, there's a checkbox, usually somewhere around here or up here. It's going to be somewhere around this agency code area that you just a checkbox, and you'll be able to take a look at that. All right. Once you're finished with the Inception tab, which is the first view that you get when you go in there, the next thing you're going to do is the Description tab. This is where the BCD item shows up. Now, if it's a weather, it's already going to have a BCD item in it, because again, that pre-populates. If it's not weather, then what you'll need to do is you'll click on the Add button, and then you'll come over here. Now, if it's a time change, and there's a little checkbox that's down here at the bottom, which you can't see on this view right now, that you'll have to check on that, so that way you can, no, sorry, not a time change, I apologize, a quantity change. If it's for a quantity change CLIN, then you just check the box, and that will set everything up to help you get through and choose the quantity CLINs in order to do that. Now, if you accidentally click the Add button and you come over here and you try to enter an estimate and you don't see change quantity, it's like, wait a minute, this is a quantity CLIN. Where's that? That means you got to go back, delete that BCD item box that says it's a quantity change. Then you'll go through and you'll see the change quantity button show up at that point. But otherwise, if it's just a time change or a money change for a non-quantity value CLIN, then what you can do is click on this Add button and then enter your initial estimates, change your title, and this is where you can change the item numbers. This is editable after you add it, so you'll just add this and change it how you need. Enter the information, all the other information through here as required. If there's a change in the time for the contract, you will enter that in here. Then when you're done, click the back button to save your changes. Also, over here underneath the help the back and the refresh button and the logout button, you will also see there's a little button. Hey, there it is, BCD. So this way you click on this and it'll show you a preview of the BCD item for what it looks like as you go through and enter the information. All right. After you have finished the Description tab, the next is the Status Funding tab. Now, what you enter for which of these checkboxes you check is going to depend on the contract, the change that's actually happening, and the office or the local or the district policies that are associated with your contract. So if you don't know which checkbox to check, you give us a call. We're going to let you know, hey, you need to contact your district administrator or your district office and find out, or your local office and find out what the policy is for that one, because it just depends on what it is that you're doing. And we don't know. We can just tell you which ones to do and what to do once you check those boxes, but that's about it. So usually when you check these boxes, you'll see some dates populating in these various different columns. If there's a date that's populating it, most likely you'll need to enter that date in there before you can continue. Now, all of this stuff is edited when it is first started, but once you've tied it up, you can't make changes at that point. So this one has already been tied up and to a mod, that is, it's been connected to a mod. So it doesn't show that you can edit this stuff. But usually what will happen is you'll click on the BCD, you'll put this information. This information right here is going to pull from what you put in the description tab over here. So if this information doesn't show up correctly, then you'll have to go back to the description tab, update that information, and go from there. Once you've filled out all of the information that's showing up in here, the next thing to do is to come down here, set up the contract change for the correct funding account. Now, this is the first place where I see a lot of problems with connecting the obligation to the RMS CLIN inside of RMS. So basically, if you get to a progress payment and you go and you click on the progress payment, you're finishing it up, you do the obligations, you get to the obligation tab, and you see that the money is going in weird places. It's going to the wrong obligation, or it's overfunded on this obligation or something like that. 9 times out of 10, the issue starts right here. It's very important that you make sure whatever money you put here is the correct funding account. You will need to know very well which funding account is associated with obligations. So you need to know specifically the funding account, the PRNC, and the obligation. All 3 of those need to be known in order for you to be able to complete this correctly without having problems. Because what happens is if you just say, oh, well, I know it's on, these are all the same, so it doesn't matter. I can put it on any, put it on this one. Because if your obligation is on this one, and this one, then you need to split that money up between those 3. So it's very important you know which obligation the money is coming from and which funding account it's associated with, and make sure you put it on the right one. Now, usually the numbers over here aren't going to be exactly the same. They will be different. But in this case, because this is a test contract, we don't have access to CFMs, it's going to show up the same number. But keep that in mind. This is the first place that you will see problems within the progress payments. So if you see a progress payment that shows some problems with the obligations not going to the right place, and this is the first time after a modification has been done, pause, go back and verify the information here as well as in the modification. And I'll talk about that when we get to that page, to make sure it was set up correctly. Because if you don't do it now, what happens is you make that progress payment by editing out those obligations. You're going to constantly have to do it every single time you do another modification. Another progress payment. So save yourself a little bit of time. Make sure you know this information and you put it in correctly the first time. So that way, when you go through and do the progress payments, you won't have to be scratching your head like, where is that supposed to go? Because that don't belong there. All right. I forgot one thing. Cut on my rant. I apologize. The last thing that you have to do prior to finishing this out is the change request funding status down here. Once everything is done, all of the dates are set up. You have the dates to the inception done. You've got VCD done. You've got the status funding done. Then you can come through and you can change this from to approved. So once you've changed this to approved and all of the dates are entered, you can now tie it to a modification. If required, you can do the claims. Now, the claims and disputes, you've got to set that up separately. We do actually have a YouTube training video talking about how to get the claims and disputes. And then, of course, you have the supporting documents. If you need to add any supporting documents, that goes here too. But neither of these 2 tabs are going to stop you from linking it to a modification. However, it's probably a good idea to set these up before you start the modification itself. Now, on to the modification. That is this module here, contract modifications. Okay. When you first open up the contract modifications, like all the other ones, it's going to show you the list of the modifications that are currently inside of your contract. And it will give you all of the information based off of that. And if you single click on them down here at the bottom, you will have a little bit of information showing you some basics of where that modification is at. And if there's anything else showing up over here. Now, most of the time you want all of these if if the modification is done, you want all of these checkboxes to be green and showing up. Most of the time. There are exceptions, of course, to all of that, but just so you know, most of the time you want that. If it's done, you want that done. And you know that it's done because it is completed in RMS. Yes, it's done. All right, when you open up the modification, the first view that you're going to find is your SF30-1 tab. The first one that's going to show up in your modification edit view, and you have the change requests. This is where you add that information. You have the CLIN, and then you have the funding information showing up down in here. Now, the first thing that you have to do is first tie it to the change request. Now, this one's not showing it, but you'll click on an add button over here, and then it'll bring up the lookup field of all of the change requests that can be added to this particular modification, meaning it's not been added to another modification already. It will show both the pending change requests as well as the ones that are available. You will know that because the box that shows up, if you look all the way to the right of that box, there's a little checkbox. If the checkbox is not checked, it's not ready for the modification, which means you got to go back to the change request and make sure all of your dates are entered and that it's been changed from requested to approved on the third tab, the middle tab. And then depending on what type of change request will depend on if this stuff pre-populates automatically or not. If it's a quantity change for the change request, this information will pre-populate automatically. You don't have to worry about that. But if it's not a quantity change, it's just a regular CLIN, then what you will have to do is there will be a button here that will allow you to do three things. You can either modify an existing CLIN, create a new CLIN, or you can I forgot what the third one was. I apologize. Not enough coffee or too much coffee. I'm not sure which it is. But you have the ability to modify the CLIN, add a new CLIN, or add another. I can't remember what it is. I apologize. One of those things. But once you've added the CLINs, once the CLIN has been added, then the funding account shows up down here at the bottom. Now, if you set up the change request correctly and there were more than one funding accounts, they will both show up right in here. And you will have to double click on them to set up. Now, this section is where you set up the PRNCs. And it's important that you make sure you put it on the correct PRNCs. So if you set up, thank you, James. So for the CLINs, you have three options. You've got the manually add a CLIN, automatically add a CLIN for the moment, or modify an existing CLIN. Thank you, James. I appreciate that. I think we need to add that button in there so I remember that. For this particular one down here, once you've got the CLINs added and taken care of, then you can come down to the funding and it will show up. And when you double click on it, it will show you the PRNCs that are associated with the information that you're looking for. If you did not set up the change request correctly with the right funding account and the PRNC is missing here, that's because it's not on the right funding account in the change request. Back to the change request, make sure the change request is put on the right funding account on that third tab. Then come back into the modification and you'll be able to see the PRNC that you're looking for. And at that point, you can go ahead and add it. What you will also see is the change amount will show up in all of these various different places. So that way you can make sure everything adds up like it's supposed to. Mostly it's more important on this one for this section for making sure that this number and this number and this number all match, because this is going to be pulled from the change request. And this is going to be pulled from the sum of the CLINs. So if you don't have enough CLINs going on in here, then you'll be able to see that by looking at those numbers. All right, next tab, SF30-2. This is the tab where you're going to fill out some other information. Now, a lot of this stuff is going to show up. It tells you which block of the form it actually is going to fill out. And you will need to fill out this information based off of your district's policy, the modification itself, the contract, depending on the situation that you happen to be using in. But it's very important that you put in the modification number itself, which you're going to get from PD squared. Eventually PD squared is going to be going away, but for now, PD squared is what you're going to use in order to get the modification number. Now, you will not be able to complete this modification without this PD squared. Another thing to know, if you are trying to complete the mod package the mod package which is where all of the documents get sent to PCF, and you accidentally put the wrong number in here, and you complete that mod package, you send it off to PCF, and RMS comes back with an error message because PCF said, that's not the right number, you can't do that, then you're going to have to manually upload all of that information into PCF yourself, because RMS can't resend that information, but you can put that number, but it can't resend that information. So make sure that when you put in this modification number that you've got the correct number, so that way you don't have to worry about going back and putting it in PCF yourself, because from what I've been told, that's sometimes a little difficult. All right, this one's talking about block 13 and 13E and 14, and here's some information about that stuff. Now, on the previous slide, there was also some more information about blocks 2, 4, and 12. You can go back and take a look at that. And then here's some good information for you for the SF30 for those 2 blocks as well. On the next tab, you have the SF30-3 tab. So this is going to be for block 14 continued. And then you've got block 15A, and then you've got, for the signatures, block 16A. Fill these out as your district and office's policies. The next important tab is your release mod tab. This is where you actually tie the obligations to the changes that you're making for the CLINS that were set up on the SF30-1 tab. So you will need to make sure that if the contractor has to sign it, you check this box right here and then enter the dates that are signed as needed. If it doesn't need to be checked, if they don't need to sign it because it's a unilateral instead of a bilateral change, then you can uncheck this box. In order to view this box down here, you must have the government signature date. Now, when you enter this government signature date, everything on these previous 3 tabs will no longer be editable. Well, you can look at them, but you can't really edit them. Well, you can still edit I think you can still edit this page, but just know that once you enter this information, there's a lot of stuff inside these 3 tabs that you can't do anymore. So make sure when you're ready to do this that everything on these 3 tabs have already been completed and taken care of. Once you have entered this signature, then you can see the CLINS that you had set up on the SF30-1 tab. They will show in here, and you will see some summaries showing up down here. And of course, when you first set it up, the variance is going to be 0 because you haven't set the obligations. To set the obligations, you're going to double click on each of the individual CLINS, and you're going to choose the funding button, and you're going to find your obligation and put the money on it. Now, this is, all right, so I'm going to back up. Sorry. For this one, when you go in there and you go to the funding, if you get to the view and you see that your obligation line item is not showing up, that means that it was not set up correctly either on the SF30-1 tab, or it was not put on the correct funding account in the contract change request view, where I told you the funding accounts were set up. So those are the 3 places. So if you get to the edit view for your CLIN, you go to the funding and your obligation line item is not showing up, you do have the option to override that. But I recommend don't do that, because that's going to make you have a lot more work to do in your progress payments the next time that you go in and do some of that stuff. So if you ever get to the point where if you get to the point where you're editing this and you don't see your obligation line item, go back. Don't go forward. Don't just push through, because it's going to make more work for you in the long run to just say, oh, let me click this button, show all of my obligations. Ah, there it is. Let's put the money here. You're going to have more work by doing it that way. So just take a second, back up, go back, and make sure everything is set up correctly in the change request and on the SF30-1 tab, because it will save you time in the long run. Okay. Then, where's my next button? There we go. Okay. Once you have finished everything, it's going to sit there and after you have edited all of this stuff and you sit there and mark it as the modification complete, it's going to say all of the activities have to be balanced prior to making these payments. Do you want to proceed? And click yes. You can, as the government, set up that stuff in the pay activities. But again, if your contract is set up with an SDF file, I don't recommend that you balance those pay activities for the contractor. I recommend you tell the contractor, hey, the modification is ready to go. Update your scheduling software, upload a new SDF file, let's get it done. And then have them do it, because that will save some potential issues if the contractor doesn't do it after you put it in there, and then they go to make the next progress payment, and then they do a new SDF file, but what you put in there before is no longer in the SDF file because they didn't put it in their scheduling software. So it's better to have the contractor do it as opposed to doing it for yourself here. But you do have the option to do that if you need to. Let's see here. Next. Yes, here's the pay activities tab. So it will show you the CLINS, all of the CLINS that are affected by this particular modification and what needs to be balanced and whether or not it's been balanced or not. If you double click on this, what it will do is it will bring up the all of the activities that are currently linked to this CLIN from the pay activities module. And you can go through, and again, you can manually balance them for your contractor. But again, I wouldn't recommend it, especially if you're using an SDF file. And as you see, this is the edit view that it will come in, so that way you can go through and modify it because it's the same thing. So let me back up a second. From this screen, you double click on here. It's going to show you a list of all of the pay activities associated with this CLIN. You double click on the CLIN, or the pay activity that's being modified, and it will bring this view right here for you to be able to actually update it. So say you took money off, then you'll just take money off here. If you added money, you add money here, whatever it happens to be. Or if the pay activity ended up being, yeah, we're not having this anymore, you can just put it down to $0. So that gives you that option. But again, only do that if your contract is not using an SDF file. All right, next tab, mod package. Now, what you will see is in the last couple of months, we've made some slight changes to the mod package tab, mostly to make your life a little bit easier. So instead of having a whole slew of different options to choose from down here and then going into each individual document package, adding it in this document package, backing out, go to the next document package, backing out, we put it in one. We give you one document package, so that way you can add all of the documents in one place. It just makes it so much easier. Now, you do have the option of checking this box to add the mod package into PCF manually yourself, or you can just go ahead and click on this add button right here to get it set up, so that way you can add the documents to the mod from RMS, and RMS will send it for you to PCF. Once everything is done, then this is the box that you check in order to get it sent to PCF. Inside of that document package, it looks like every other document package that you usually see. You've got your add, edit, delete button. You can add the documents by using add. You can add them by dragging and dropping in this box here, or you can add them in this box. Now, this is where the difference is. You now have a new column here that says PCF container. This is all of that information that used to be on the modification mod package tab, where you had to go into each of these individual sections, check this is required, this is required, this is required, and then open it up and add the document package, and then add the document and go through that way. But this one, all you have to do is pick, okay, this document is supposed to be the VCD item. This document is supposed to be the certified current cost for pricing data. So you can do all of that stuff from here. So this is going to save you time by having it in one place. But remember, before you continue on this, you have to make sure you select all of the PCF containers so it goes to the right location. And then once you're done with all of this information, you click on the complete package. At that point, you go back to the screen and check this box, and you're done with that. Next. And of course, the supporting documents. So let me go back over here really fast. With the supporting documents tab, when you add the change request on this SF30-1 tab, when you click on the add button, you choose the change request. You now have the option of taking the supporting documents that you put on the in the change request module itself, and it's going to ask you, do you want to add those supporting documents? You can either say yes or no. If you say yes, then it's going to automatically put those documents in this tab right here. If you need to add any more, of course, you can click on this tab to go ahead and add some more. It's up to you how you want to do that one. Modifications, completed goals. So once the modification is completed, again, you want to see all of these lovely little green tick boxes showing up down over here. And it'll tell you completed, completed, completed. And if there are amounts, that'll show up over here and some of the information that's in this particular case right here. Next, contractor claims and disputes. So for this one, if you have any contractor claims or disputes, they show up in this section right here. And what it is when you open it up, this is what you've got. You've got your add, edit, and delete, and you can go in here and add the information and go through and show up what you're looking for. Now, the easiest way to edit something in a data grid is just double click on it, because otherwise it's single click and then click up here. Just an extra step. That's okay. You can preview some of the claims and disputes by clicking on this button over here. You can see when the dispute was received, the ID that you set for it, the amounts, the time, and the status based off of that. Now, if you want to see all of the contractor claims in one place with all of the information, you can go to the contract reports tab, which, let me back up a little bit, is over here. So you just click on this button. And when you click on this button, it will bring up this one right here. And I would suggest using the search box to search for contractor claims. It will shrink all of this up. You'll just expand the finances, double click on this, and it will show you all of the contractor claims that are showing up in there. Now, let's see. Yep. So once you have added, when you go to click to add a contractor claim or dispute, what you will see is this information right here. The first thing that it's going to ask you for is the claim ID is actually going to be given to you automatically, set by RMS. But you do need to set the project manager, and you can set the type, what kind of dispute or claim it happens to be, and then you'll click OK. Once you've entered all of the information in the edit view, then here's what the preview of the report looks like for the contractor's claim with all of the information that are going into that claim. Now, something that I don't see that we're showing, when you want to attach this to a modification, you'll just double click on it, and down in the bottom, I believe it's on the bottom portion of that screen, you will see the option to attach it to a contract request change. So basically, you have to do the change request first, then go into the contractor claims, set the contractor claims to what it is, and then it will take you back to the contractor claims, to the change request that you were in, so that you can continue editing your change request and keep going with that one. Again, remember, there's always some information off the side over here that I'm not going to go through and read for you. I'll let you do that on your own. And any questions about that? I'm going to go ahead and be quiet for a couple of minutes before we continue on. Okay. So I didn't hear any questions. We'll go ahead and continue on with this. All right, the next section is the schedules tab. So in the schedules tab, you have a couple of options. You've got the activity schedule, the milestone schedule, the placement schedule, and the feature schedule. And that's where you can find it inside of the contract. And here's some overview information about some of the SDF information. I kind of hit on some of this stuff. So if you would like to see more information, or if you would like a little bit more information, you can come back and take a look at this slide and see what it happens to say. The activity schedule is the first schedule that we're going to go ahead and take a look at. And with this particular view right here, this activity schedule is for manual activity schedule. So this is for a contract that is not set up to use an SDF file. Yep, okay. Sorry, had to make sure I had unmuted myself. If you are set up to have an SDF file, the view of the activity schedule is going to be very different than what you have here. You're not going to be able to make any edits or changes to it at all, because all of the information is going to be pulled from your SDF file. You won't have to worry about maintaining this information and making sure it is correct or not, because it will be set up and done in a combination of both the SDF file and, if you set it up, the QC daily reports. Now, for a manual one, the actual start and finish dates, all that stuff is set in the QC daily reports. So the contractor will have to set that information in there, and then it will update in here. You can force that in a SF file as well. It's up to you, because even if the contractor puts in the actual start and finish dates in their scheduling software, if you have the contract set up correctly, it will force them to do it in their QC daily reports regardless, even though it sees that, oh, there's an actual start and finish date. I'm not putting it in there. So just keep that in mind. All right, the next module inside the schedules is the milestone module. This is where a lot of information happens for changes to the status of the contract inside of RMS. The most important stuff is actually going to be the actual dates for system milestones. The system milestones are going to be the ones that control things like the ability to start QC daily reports, the ability for contractor payrolls to be started or stopped. Same thing with the QC dailies, those kinds of things. So if your contractor comes to you and says, hey, I got to put in my contractor payroll, but I've entered the first day on site and I've got the contractor set up, but no payroll is showing up. There's two possible reasons for that. The first one is the NTP acknowledged actual date has not been set. The other thing could be that the administrator on the contractor side hasn't gone into the contractor payrolls to start those generating. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, if you want the payrolls to stop, there are specific milestones that have to have actual dates set as well. And once those are set, no more payrolls will be generated after that actual date has been entered. So keep that in mind. Again, you have the same types of settings for grouping setups. You've got the funnel to change this. So if you only want to see the system milestones, you can see that. You've got the district milestones. You've also got the office milestones, which show up as local. So if you want to see specific things, you can do that. You've got the sort tiles across the top that will show you the various different types of milestones. If you want to only see the district milestones or the system milestones, only construction milestones, those show up down here. The award duration is usually set the first time. You don't want to mess with that, but the current duration is affected by modifications. So this number is going to change based off of this number, as well as any modifications that have time changes to show up inside of here. You can always add some local local milestones if you need like a specific milestone that doesn't show up from the office or the district that you want to have set for this contract. You can use the add button. You can delete some milestones. You cannot delete the system milestones, but local milestones, office milestones, some district milestones, you can delete those ones. But if it's a system milestone, no, those are required for RMS to function correctly. So they're not allowed to be deleted, and you will not be able to do that. All right, placement schedule. All right, placement schedule is a very interesting option. It's going to tell you, it'll kind of give you an idea of how your contract is sitting based off of certain information, and you can change some of that stuff based off of the various different settings that you've got going on here. Now, note this area is there's a lot of things that affect this area. So just note that if something doesn't show up correctly in this area, contact the help desk support. We could probably help you with that, or we can tell you about where to look to try and find out what's going on if it's not working correctly. But make sure that you take a look at what sections we've got. So you can sit there and use different options for this particular one. And that's for the placement curve itself. That's just to see, okay, what's we going to do? What kind of setup do you have? You can set it up by manually entering the earnings that you think it's going to go through. You can use an S curve or some other thing, and that you'll take this select S curve, and it's going to go to a lookup field for something that was in the district office, and all that stuff is set there, and you can choose the appropriate one, or you can base it off of the contractor's activity schedule, start and finish dates, and use either the early, mid, float, or late. Now, this information, this early, mid, float, or late, is associated with the SDF file. So if your contract is set up for an SDF file, you'll have this option to be able to choose these three. If it's not, then you can just set it up by the schedule. And of course, you can set when to start it, how much to start it with, and when to stop it. The next one is the feature schedule. So all of this information is done under the definable features of work module inside of the QA/QC tab. So the contractor first has to set up the certificated inspections and the features of work in order for this information to show up. They can't actually edit all of this information. But for when these are actually held, that information is set up in the QC daily reports by the contractor themselves, but you can set scheduled dates here by double clicking on them and hitting all that stuff once the feature has been added. If there's no feature showing up in here, you have to go back to the feature module and get that set up. And we do have some training modules for your contractors to show how to do that on our YouTube channel. So you can go ahead and take a look at that and see what's going on for there. Import and export tab. Import and export tab will actually save you quite a bit of time in various different areas inside of RMS. You can import for P2, submittals, something from another contract, mod lists, and specs and type. Also, the export of document packages show up in here. Use your friend. It is the second to last tab that is inside of the contract, so it'll show up. And these are the options that you have in order to go through. Now, if your contract is not set up to use a SDF file, then this module right here is not going to show up. Only time this module will show up is if your contract is set up that way. Now that happens under the administration tab, under contract setup, and under the schedules tab. Oh, excuse me. All right. Importing from P2. We still put this module in here because of late for the RMS 238, just to let you know that it's in there. But guess what? You don't have to worry about that because all of that stuff is actually set up in the background and is imported automatically from our servers and into RMS. All you have to do is link your contract inside of the P2 projects under the administration tab, and you should be good to go. If for whatever reason it doesn't show up in there, contact the help desk support will help you figure that out and try and figure out what's going on with that. All right, importing the submittals. So for this one, if you want to import submittal sections, item numbers, descriptions, paragraph types, VA or FIOs, this is the area that you can go through and have the contractor do. Now, this will save you and the contractor quite a bit of time by using this information or by using the specs intact. It depends on how you want to do that one. But the first thing that you have to do is download the template in order to import the submittal. So you download the template, it's an Excel file, it's downloaded as a zip file, so you have to extract it first, and then you'll go through and you'll fill out all of the information, and once it's done, you choose which register you're going to import it to, and then you have two options down here. Override existing submittals. Caution. Be very, very, very careful with that one. I'll explain that in a second. The other one, which is highly recommended to use, is merge with existing submittals. So the reason I say be very, very careful with the overwrite is because if you've already got submittals that have been submitted to the government, transmitted to the government on the transmittal log tab, the transmittal log module, if you overwrite it, guess what? All that's gone. All of it is gone. And that is, depending on how big of a problem that is, that's going to take a while to get all of that stuff back and get it back together. And that means a lot of work for you. So it is better to use the merge with existing submittals and then delete the duplicates than it is to overwrite the existing. Because if you overwrite the existing, you could literally lose everything that you've already done. And if a contract is almost completed and you use this button, that's not fun. That is never a good feeling when that happens and you go through and you're like, oh my goodness. But it's okay because guess what? When you click this option and you choose import submittal register, it's going to warn you. It's like, hey, I need your username and password to approve this. Are you really sure you want to do it? So if you ever get something that says that, pause and think, is this really what you want to do? Because if it's asking you for a username and password or a PIN, that means that it's something you can't come back from, and it's probably going to make some changes that you may not know or want if you're not paying attention to what you're doing. So just keep in mind that if anywhere in RMS it asks you, hey, give me your PIN, or hey, give me your password, make sure that's actually what you really want to do before you say, here's my PIN, here's my password, go. And then find out that no, that was not what you wanted to do. So just take a couple seconds, make sure that's what you want before you click on that import. Now, the merge, again, is what you usually do. So you'll click on the merge after you've chosen this one, and then you'll import the submittal register. It's going to ask you, where's this file located? You're going to go to the file. Now, if the file is open, it's going to complain to you. So you have to close the file first. And then you pick the file, you upload it, and it's going to go through and it's going to tell you, done! I've uploaded 3 submittals. So you're like, wait a minute. There's 655 submittals in there. Why are there only 3? Probably because the template was not filled out correctly. Now, on our YouTube channel, there is a YouTube video tutorial showing you exactly the common issues that happen with this particular one and how to fix them. So if you ever run into that and you don't know what's going on, you can either contact us, we'll send you the video, so that way you can go ahead and look at it, or just go straight to our YouTube channel and you'll be able to find it from there by searching in submittal or transmit. Either one of those will work and you'll be able to find it from there. Okay, next we are copying data from another contract. So the first thing that you want to do if you want to copy data from another contract is you're going to select which contract to copy by clicking on this blue lookup field box here, and it's going to bring a list of all of the contracts from the district. Once you choose the contract you want to copy the data from, you can decide what it is that you are going to copy by clicking on these checkboxes down here. And then when you're done, you've got this copy selected data. And of course, there's a warning down here. It's going to overwrite everything. It is not, it cannot be changed. Oh, make sure this is really what you want to do. That you're only really going to do this at the beginning of a contract. You're not, I would definitely not recommend doing this in the middle of a contract. So at the beginning of the contract, sure, yeah, go ahead. You can do that. But in the middle of a contract, not a good idea. Next, we have the export mod list. So you want a list of all of the mods that are in the contract, you can go ahead and do that. You have the option of exporting it to just a single file, or you can export it to the clipboard, in which case then you can pop it in whatever file you want to put it in. So that's up to you. Specs and tag file. This is nice. So the specs and tag file is going to set up your submittal register. It's going to set up your specification section. It's going to set up a lot of stuff, and it's going to do it all. But what you'll have to do is set everything up in specs and tag, and then export it as a TXT file, and then you can import it into RMS by using this add button. Now, what happens is you'll see all of the specs and tag files that you have imported, and you can double click on them to see all of the information that is in there, and you can add them and go through and do all that information as well. But this one is actually probably more comprehensive than using the submittal, the import submittals, because that one only imports the submittal register. It doesn't import the specs and tag file. It doesn't import anything else. It only does that. So by using the specs and tag file, it'll actually give you more information and make it a little bit easier for you to do a bunch of other stuff as well. It will make quite a bit. All right, next on the list is the for the closeout tab. This is where you can do the real property, the D1354, DD1149, the CPAR evaluations, warranty tracking, and closeout documents. This gives you the list of pretty much basically what we just talked about with some extra details. You can read that at your leisure. Real property. Okay, so with the real property, we have now opened this up so that the contractors can fill out some of this top information. With the real property item, what you've got going on here is the contractor can now enter some information that is showing up in here. If the contractor starts, well, sorry, the contractor can do this stuff, and then you can accept it. And if you need to include the DDCs, you can choose that here. You've got all of this information that needs to be filled out. You can set, now the contractor's not going to be able to set the funding source. That's up to you to get that taken care of. So make sure you do that one. We do have a training video on the real properties. So that would be a good idea if you have a user who doesn't know how to use real properties or set those ones up, because it'll show them exactly step by step how to go through and fill all of this stuff up, including what the contractor can do and what the government has to do. But yeah, if you check there's a multiple funding source, then you'll have two other funding sources that will show up down here, and you'll just say which one, what percentage each of the funding sources is coming off of, and then you can fill out this information down here. Okay, here's a little bit more information basically about what I just talked about. And this little bit right here, I'm just going to read this one because this is pretty interesting. For each real property item, the Corps needs to determine if the real property item can be or will be included in the DDC for the final DD 1354 cost calculations. So that's what this checkbox is for. So if you need to include this in the final DDC, then just check this box. All right. Transfers. So for the transfers edit view, you've got 3 tabs that you're going to have to go through and fill out the information. And as you go through and fill them out, you can click this lovely little box right here, and it will show you what the form looks like when you go through and fill out this information, letting you know where things are and what things are doing. You can add the real properties that go on this form down here at the bottom by using this add button. Now we have added a feature to RMS that allows you to rearrange what order these properties show up on the form itself. You can add them in any order that you want, but now if you accidentally put this, like, see, this is deliberately out of order, 1, 2, and 3 is backwards. So you actually want 1 at 1. Then you click and hold on here, drag it up to the top, let it go, and it will change it to 1, 2, and 3. We have allowed that to make it easier for you for modifying those, because we know in the past it was not so easy to change the location if you added it incorrectly, because you would have to delete it and start again. It's no fun. Again, we have a video on this as well, so if you need to see that, go to our YouTube channel, it's there. Then you have to go to the deficiencies tab, and if you need to add any deficiencies, you click on the add button. If you decide that's not a deficiency that should be in there, and then you click on you select it, single click, select it, and then choose delete. Last one is the remarks. You're going to fill out the remarks based off of what this particular transfer edit is and your district and office policies. And then once all of this information has been completed, you're going to open up this DD form 1354. You're going to save it to your computer, and then you're going to click on this add button to add the document package and upload that 1354 to that document package if you need to have it sent to PCF. And then again, if you need the DDC applied to all of the real property for this one, you can also put that one in here. Otherwise, you just enter the dollar amounts that need to go through as needed. And another place that you can see the DD 1354 is the contract reports from the main contract menu. Go over to the contract reports, and then you will see under the report menus, under closeouts, there is the DD form 1354, transfer and acceptance of military real property. You also have the warranty inspection and the CPAR evaluation forms that can also show up in here. And if you don't want to try and find all of that stuff, because there may be more in here, actually, I don't think there are, but you can certainly use the search box to make your life easier. Just double click on it. It will probably ask you when you double click on this one, if you have more than one transfer form, and say, which one do you want to look at? Or it'll show you all of them, depending on what you set up. All right, the requisitions, DD 1149. There's a bunch of information on here for you for the government furnished property and things that will show up on here. I will let you read that as your leisure. But when you open it up, you've got the add, edit, and delete buttons, and the basic information will show up when it was transferred, what the transfer number was, where it came from, and where it went to. And this is the basic of what it will look like when you double click on, well, let me go back. So if you want to see the specifics of these, you just double click on it, and that will bring up the edit view where you can look at the header and the transfer property, and you'll fill out all of this information as needed. And then you'll go to the transfer property and add any documents that go with that for the transfer property itself. And then we have the CPAR, Contractor Performance Assessment Report. This information gets filled out. You'll need to go through and fill out all of this information. We do not currently actually export to CPAR. So what you will do is after you fill out all of the information on all of these tabs, you'll click on this document, you'll download it to your computer, and then manually input it into whatever location it needs to actually go to. Warranty tracking. So warranty tracking mostly is going to be set up by the contractor for the first part because they are the ones that are guaranteeing of the work, and they're going to set up the information that you're going to need. Let me see if I can zoom in on that. Better. Start with the bottom one. So when you double click on the warranty information that the contractor has set up, so you want to look and see what's going on, what you will see is, oh, there you are, is you will see all of this information here. Now, normally the contractor is going to set all this stuff up. They're going to choose if there's 2 warranty inspections that are required. Now, whether they're actually 4 months or 9 months, that's dependent upon the contract. It's dependent upon the district policy and the office policy. But we just automatically default it to 4 and 9 months. And then you can set when the warranty starts, or well, the contractor. It's when the warranty starts and when the warranty ends. They'll add any documents to the 4-month inspection and any documents that are required for the 9-month inspection, or if it's 6 months a year, then that's how you'll get that set up. Now, if it's done, they'll check this lovely little box here, and they'll check this lovely little box when that one is done. If they don't actually need either of these ones, there's no inspection required, then you can actually just uncheck both of these ones and call it good. Or if they only have one, then you can uncheck one of them and leave the other one checked and just fill out the information that is required. All right, so here's a little bit more information about filling out that information. So once the contractor has filled out all of that information, they need to get the PE's concurrence before they can start getting everything else done. And we are now on the final slide. These are the questions. I'm going to open it up for all questions. If you have any questions about something specific, or if there's something specific that you would like to see, we have a couple of minutes. Well, actually, we got quite a bit of time. If you want to see some live demonstrations or something like that, please let us know. Or if there are any questions that were in the chat that still need to be answered or need a demonstration, we'll go ahead and open it up and let you guys ask your questions.
Can you hear me out there?
Yes, I can. How can I help you?
So right now on my job, and I'm the QA, we are between quality control system operators, and my superintendent is filling in, and he is struggling with electronically signing QC dailies.
Okay. So there's a couple of different reasons that he could possibly have problems with that. 9 times out of 10, it has to do with a setting in the computer. But if he's got a government computer that's ACIT maintained, he should be okay with that. I would suggest submitting a support ticket or have him call us, so that way we can find out exactly what's going on with what his unique situation is, because most government don't have issues with signing daily reports most of the time.
Okay, yeah, he's not government. He's a contractor, and he's in his own words, I'm not sure I'm using this in the proper context, a super user.
Okay.
But he's having to create the PDF for the daily, pull it back out, sign it electronically, and then resubmit it. And then when I accept them, I have to go through and determine which one has been signed and then delete the others. Sometimes it's part of his binder, like with the daily sign-in log and daily safety brief, roster, and things of that nature. It's just, I just can't help thinking there's got to be a better way.
There is. 9 times out of 10, probably what's going on with him is there's a Windows permission setting that has to be set up correctly on the computer. And with contractors, we see this quite a bit. If he has an IT department that manages his system, it could be they've locked it down so that way he can't do that. But if he goes in and the documents that he has signed, you shouldn't have to try and figure out which one was signed and which one wasn't. You can he should be able to remove the ones that are not supposed to be in there, check the box for manually signed, so that way that works. But if he's still having problems, I would suggest you have him call us or submit a support ticket so that way we can try and figure out what's going on with his particular computer.
Okay. With the rainy weather we're having in the Midwest, there's lots of opportunities to do that in the coming days and weeks. What would be the direct line? Like
So,
Doug and I sitting down, we both got our RMS open. I've got it open on the government side. He's got it open on the contractor side, and we make the call. Yeah, there it is. That same slide. Okay.
all right. Of course, it does that all the time. There we go. So
10, 11.
all of our contact information, the phone number down here for other people who weren't able to get that, as well as our website showing up right here. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. Anything else? Well, while we're waiting on that, let me go ahead and show you really fast our YouTube channel so that way you can get used to that. If you go to the RMS website at rms.usacearmy.mil, scroll down until you get to where'd it go? RMS Help Videos. It will go ahead and take you to the YouTube channel here. You can go ahead and you can look at either the videos or the playlist. Now, if you go to the playlists and you take a look at the webinars, this is where this particular webinar is going to show up. You can go into view playlist. Once it's ready, it will show up in here. But if you want to look for a specific video, you'll just click on this videos that shows up here, and then you'll use this search box right here and search for something specific. So say I wanted to do the transmittals video, I can just start typing in transmittal if I can type that is. Press enter, and it's going to reduce this down, and it's going to give you some information. Now, pay attention to the dates that are showing up is here, because we do have some of the older ones, and we try to take those ones off, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer for us to find it. So if you find an old video that's out of date, please just let us know. And we'll go ahead and make sure we get that updated and remove the old one. And we also tell you when it's going to be updated. And you can go through and take a look what's going on. And as you can see, there's ones for the government, and ones for the contractor as well. Are there any other questions? All right, I'm going to be silent for a few minutes just to let everybody get a couple of seconds to try and figure out if they have any questions. And if there are no questions, then I will pass it back to Ms. Bonita.
That gets us for this day. We will have a follow-up training, advanced RMS training once a quarter. That's the schedule. So you'll have another one actually at the end of this month for the CONUS team. The information is the same unless RMS has changes. Thank you for coming. We will get these slides posted.